Okay, up to this point in this class, here's the kind of thing that's happened. I've given you an equation. I might give you 3x minus 4y equals 8. And from that equation, I might ask you some questions. What kind of questions might I ask? Okay, I might ask you, is it an equation? And the answer would be yes. I might ask you, is it linear?
Yes.
Yes. I might ask you to graph it. What else might I ask?
Solve for x.
I might ask you to solve for x. I might ask you to solve for y.
Find the slope.
I might ask you to find the slope. I might ask you to
Find the y-intercept.
find the y-intercept. I might ask you to find the x-intercept. Okay, so basically that's what we've done up to this point. I've given you an equation, and I've asked you to give me lots of information about the equation. Today we're going to do the backward process. What's the backward process?
Find the equation.
I'm going to give you information, and from that information you're going to give me the equation. All right, so let's answer a few questions about this. Typical questions I would probably ask about this one. I want you to find the slope, the y-intercept, and then I want you to draw me a graph. If I gave you that equation, what would be the best way to find the slope and the y-intercept and draw the graph? I really want to get it in y equals mx plus b form. Why do you want that?
It'll tell you all of that right there.
It tells you all of that right there. If you have it in y equals mx plus b, it tells you the slope, tells you the y-intercept. When you know the slope and y-intercept, it's very easy to draw a graph. So I agree completely. I would want to get y all by itself. What steps would I go through to get y all by itself? Minus 3x on both sides. So minus 4y is minus 3x plus 8 divided by negative 4. So y equals positive 3/4, because two negatives make a positive, minus 2. Okay, so that's wonderful. Now we know our slope is 3/4. We know our y-intercept is 0, comma, negative 2. I would, again, prefer that you write that as a point. And then we draw the graph. There's 0, negative 2. So that's negative 1, that's 1, that's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. From 0, negative 2, which way do I move?
Down or to the
3 over 4.
I could move down 3 and left 4. That would work. I think I'd rather go up 3 and right 4, though. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. Over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Draw my dot. Play connect the dots. That would be my answer. All right, so now I'm going to reverse it. So now I'm going to tell you, I want you to find the equation of the line. With slope 5 and y-intercept 0, negative 4. Yeah, that one's a very, very easy one. Why is that very, very easy? I give you the slope and I give you the y-intercept. If I give you the slope and the y-intercept, what are you going to use? Y equals mx plus b, because that's the slope-intercept form. All right, so really not much work for this one. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals 5x minus 4. All right, so that one was very, very easy. We like that one. Are they all going to be that easy?
Sure.
Sure. All right, no. All right. So same directions, but now I'm going to say find the equation of the line, and I'm going to give you the slope is 3 through 0, 6. I really didn't make that one any harder. No. That one's still y equals. How do you know that 6 is the b number?
It's the y-intercept.
How do you know it's the y-intercept?
X is 0.
Because x is 0.
Right.
All right, so the first time I specifically told you that the y-intercept was 0, comma, -4. This time I just said through the point 0, comma 6. You should recognize that because that's a 0 right there, I've still really just given you the y-intercept. I didn't specifically say it, but you need to recognize it.
And because it's plots.
Correct. So this one is another one where we can use y equals mx plus b. Y equals 3x plus 6. All right, so I tried to be sneaky. That didn't work. You caught on. All right. All right, so here's a harder one. Slope is 4, and then I'm going to go through the point -1, 3.
Negative. So,
Do the same thing.
yeah, -1. 0, -1 would be the.
Well, I gave you the slope, so you got half the answer, right?
4x plus 7.
Do you know the y-intercept? You could graph it. That's true.
We can find the y-intercept.
Or you can find the y-intercept. Here's what we typically do. We're still going to use our equation y equals mx plus b. We know m. M is 4. So I'm going to plug that in. Y equals 4x plus b. This time we do not know the b number. How do we know we do not know the b number? X is not 0. What we're going to do instead, we're going to take this number for x, which is -1, and we're going to take that number for y, which is 3, and we're going to plug them both in. And then what will the only letter remaining be? B. So we're going to plug in. We're going to have 3 equals 4 times -1 plus b, and we're going to solve that equation to get b all by itself. How would you solve that equation?
You get b by itself.
Yep.
Multiply 1 by 4.
Multiply -1 by 4, that's going to give you -4.
Combine them.
So 3 equals -4 plus b,
And you would add 4, right?
and you would add 4 to both sides. That's exactly right. So b is 7. Our final answer would be y equals 4x plus
Another
7.
question. I got the same answer, but I did an easier way of math in my head at least. I just took the slope of 4 and made it until the 1/3 equaled 0.
Okay, that works out pretty well when I give you the slope to be a real nice number like 4, and I give you a point where x is either 1 or -1. So you can decide I either need to go up 4 or down 4 and work it out real easily. That technique might not be so easy if I give you this number to be a fraction, and then I don't make that number so close. Let me give you an example. What if I said the slope is 2/3, and we're going to go through, I don't know, somebody give me a nice point, except you can't have x to be 0. 6, comma,
4.
4, or 4 first. Okay, so this time I think doing it in your head, starting at the point 6,4 and moving by your slope till you hit the y-axis, I don't think it's going to be too easy.
It's the origin.
We picked real nice numbers again. It turns out we're going to get a nice answer. You're right. This time it's going to be the origin. Just because we picked nice numbers. I'm going to pick numbers next time that won't be so nice. All right, again, I would do this the same way. I would start with y equals mx plus b. Y is 2/3 x plus b. I know my slope is 2/3. Then what? Plug in my numbers. I have 4 equals 2/3 times 6 plus b. So that's 4 is 2/3 times 6 happens to be 4. Subtract 4 on both sides. B is 0. That can happen. B can be 0. That just means your y-intercept is at the origin. Y equals 2/3 x would be our final answer. All right, let me try one more. See if I can come up with nice numbers that aren't so nice. Slope is -3/4 through 5, negative 2. What do I do?
Y equals mx plus b.
Y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 3/4 x plus b. Then what?
Plug in those two numbers.
Plug in those two numbers. So negative 2 equals minus 3/4 times 5 plus b. Negative 2 is, what's negative 3/4 times 5? Shouldn't need a calculator.
Those always confuse me.
You think of 5 as being 5 over 1. How do you multiply fractions?
Negative 15 over 4.
You multiply tops, multiply bottoms. Negative 15 over 4. Plus b. Then you got to get the b all by itself.
So you subtract the negative 15 over 4.
Or add 15 over 4. Subtract a negative 15 over 4 is correct. But I think it's easier to just say add a 15 over 4. So b is, all right, how do I take a nice number like negative 2 and add 15 over 4?
Don't you just do the same thing? You put 2 under 1 over 3?
I think of the negative 2 over 1,
Yeah, yeah, common denominator.
but in order to add, I have to have a common denominator. What's my common denominator?
4.
4. So negative 2 over 1 is the same as
8 over 4.
negative 8 over 4. Negative 8 over 4 plus 15 over 4 is
7 over 4.
7 over 4. So we end up with a fraction. That can happen.
Could you pull that in?
Y equals. Final answer was negative 3/4 x plus 7/4. Correct. Questions on that one? Okay. How about if I ask you, find the equation of the line through, I'm going to give you 2 points this time. One of them is 0, 5, and the other one is 2, negative 3.
So we know where the y-intercept is, right?
This time we know the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, 5. Again, I didn't spell that out, but you should recognize.
Do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x3. Yeah.
Absolutely. What we don't know this time is our slope. So we have to find our slope. We have a formula for slope. What was our formula for slope?
X2 minus X1.
Y.
Or y2.
Y2. The y's have to go on top. All right. So we have a formula for slope. M is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What's y2? Negative 3 minus y1 is 5. Divide by x2. 2 minus 0. Negative 3 minus 5. Negative 8 over 2. Negative 4 over 1, which I'm just going to write as negative 4. Okay, so now we're in great shape. Now we know our slope. Our slope is negative 4. And we know the b number. The b number is 5. All right. Y equals mx plus b, which is going to be negative 4x plus 5. Questions on that? All right, make it harder then. Through. Give me a point. That's 6.
9.
That's just a number. I need an x and a y.
9.
6, 9, and I need another point.
2, 3.
2, 3. 2, 3, 4. No, that's too many numbers. Just 2 numbers. Once again, I want you to find the equation of the line. In order to find the equation of the line, you basically need to know two things. The two things are slope and intercept. Do we know the slope? No. Do we know the y-intercept? No, I guess we can't do this problem, right?
No, we got
Yes,
this.
Oh, yes, we can. All right, so we know how to find the slope. M is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 is the number
Hold on.
3. Thank you. Minus 9 divided by 2 minus 6. 9 minus 3, negative 6 over negative 4. Negative 6 over negative 4 reduces to 3 halves. I can reduce top and bottom by 2. And 2 negatives, of course, make a positive. I know my slope. I'm halfway done. Do I know my y-intercept?
No, you just put 3 halves in for y.
Okay, so I'm going to use y equals mx plus b. I plug the 3 halves in for my m number. Which point do I use, 6 comma 9 or 2 comma 3? It doesn't matter. You can pick either one. And actually, maybe we'll do both just to show that we do get the same number. It doesn't matter. Which one do you want to use? 2, 3. All right. So I plug 3 in for my y number. 3 halves times 2 plus b. What's 3 halves times 2?
3.
3. The 2's reduce out. How do you get the b all by itself? Subtract 3. B is 0. So it looks like our final answer is y equals 3 halves x.
Can we go over that one more time? You just, I'm confused by 3 equals 3 halves times 2. I don't know how we got that, but you just multiplied everything by 2. Is that,
Well, I thought of this 2 as being 2 over 1.
oh, so you multiply. Oh,
I had a 2 on top, I had a 2 on bottom. They reduce. And so when they reduce, the only thing left is the number 3. So then I did a minus 3 on both sides. And it worked out really nicely. I ended up with a 0 there. Other questions on that one? All right. Through the point. How about this time we go negative 3, 8, and 4, 0. Once again, do I know my slope? No, I do not. But I can figure it out. I'm not worried about slope. Slope is easy enough to figure out. Do I know my y-intercept? No, don't let me trick you. What do I mean by don't let me trick you?
You know the x-intercept.
That's the x-intercept. 4 comma 0 is the x-intercept, not the y-intercept. Does knowing the x-intercept help? Not really very much. You really need to know the y-intercept. Okay. Not a problem. We find our slope. M is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's going to be 0 minus 8 over 4 minus negative 3, which is 4 plus 3. Yes. Well, I guess that's negative 8 over 7. Unfortunately, it doesn't reduce this time. So I leave it. All right. Y equals mx plus b. So y is minus 8 over 7x plus b. To find the b number.
and then y equals mx, or no, sorry.
I've already used y equals mx plus b.
Put in one of the points.
Put in one of the points, all right? For no particular reason, I'm going to use the first one.
Usually use 0.
So,
I thought 0 is our favorite number.
It is.
did you say we could use any 4, but it doesn't matter?
You could use, yeah, any combination.
3, 8, 14, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. 8 equals negative 8 over 7 times negative 3 plus b. Probably should have used the 0. It would have been easier. Chose not to. What's negative 8 over 7 times negative 3?
24 over 7.
24 over 7. Again, I think of that negative 3 as negative 3 over 1. So 8 is 24 over 7 plus b. To get the b all by itself, subtract 24 over 7. All right, again, I got to deal with my fractions here. I think of 8 as 8 over 1. I multiply top and bottom by 7. That's 56 over 7. I subtract 56 over 7 minus 24 over 7. 32 over 7 equals b. All right, final answer. Y equals
Negative 8/7
negative 8/7
x
x
plus 32.
plus 32 over 7. Questions on that? Yes?
We don't have to have the sevens for the last part, do we?
What do you mean you don't have to have the 7s?
Do they like cancel out?
I don't think they cancel out,
Oh, all right.
unfortunately. These are not like terms. One of them has an x and one of them does not, so there's really no way to combine those,
Gotcha.
unfortunately. However, you do bring up a good point. If I could show you a way to do this, where you never have to add, subtract, or multiply, or divide fractions, would that be a good thing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We have that formula. That's our formula for
Slope.
slope. And then we have this formula. What's that formula called? Intercept something,
Y intercept.
not y-intercept.
Slope intercept.
It's called slope intercept because it tells us the slope and the intercept. All right. There's this third formula that we sometimes use. And this third formula looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This one is called point slope form. Why do you think it's called point slope form?
Uses point and slopes.
It uses points and slopes. M is the slope, as M is always slope. And x1, y1 is one of the points, one of the x value, y values. So I'm going to do that same problem over again. That same problem I had a minute ago. I had 8 comma negative 3 and 0 comma 4. Or no, 4 comma 0. I'm trying to read it upside down and backward through the reflection in my paper.
It is negative 3.
8 negative 3?
It was negative 3.
Negative 3, 8? All right, start all over. The same problem. See, I'm reading it laterally inverted on the flip side of my paper here. That's why I had it backward. Negative 3, 8, and 4 comma 0. Okay. Well, to find the equation of the line, no matter what you're going to do, you need to know the slope. So how would you find the slope? Same way we always find it. Finding the slope never changes. M is, I'm not going to write down the formula again because we just did this one, 0 minus 8 over 4 minus negative 3, which was 4 plus 3. We got negative 8 over 7. Once you know the slope, you have two choices. You can do what we did last time, which is use y equals mx plus b. Your other choice is to use this equation, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. When this slope turns out to be a fraction, this second equation is the one I like. So here's what my answer is going to look like? I'm going to use y minus y1 is m times x minus x1. Y minus, what's my y1 number?
0.
I could use 0 or I could use 8. I can use either one. I'm going to use 8. Y minus 8 equals, what's m?
Negative 8 over 7.
Negative 8 over 7 times x minus negative 3. So instead of x minus negative 3, I'm going to write it as x plus 3. There's my answer. I didn't see anybody tell me I had to simplify.
Simplify.
You're not in charge, I am. That's the advantage of using this technique. If you use this technique, this is a perfectly acceptable answer. You don't need to simplify. Do you ever have to add, subtract, multiply, or divide any fractions? No. What's the downside of this technique?
You don't actually know the equation.
Yeah.
I actually know the equation. This is actually the equation.
You don't know the answer.
Oh, this is my answer.
You don't know why the y-intercept?
I don't know the y-intercept. That's the biggest downside.
Is there a way to simplify that?
Absolutely. I take the negative 8/7 and I distribute it through,
Right. Then you get everything on one side.
and then I add the 8.
Okay.
And if you do that, and you do everything correct, you should get exactly the same answer we got before. Let's do that just to make sure. Let's distribute this negative 8/7 through. We would have y minus 8 is negative 8/7 x minus 24 over 7. I think of 3 as being 3 over 1, and I multiply my tops, multiply my bottoms. And then I would have to add 8. And I have to think of 8 as a fraction with a 7 on bottom. And it's still 56. So I would get y equals negative 8/7 x plus 32/7. Is that the same answer?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, in theory, you don't actually have to have that equation to graph it.
In theory, I don't have to have this equation to graph. In fact, I really don't want to graph this one because I don't want to start with my y-intercept being a fraction. That's confusing. So if I asked you to graph this equation, how would you graph it?
The x and y exponent.
You wouldn't start at the intercept. Where would you start?
X plus 3.
Well, I would start at that point right there. So the point negative 3, 8 is right here maybe somewhere. And then I follow my slope, which would tell me
Down 8.
down 8 more. Oh, I got a problem. Can't go down. So I could go up 8 and left 7, which is still kind of a problem. I didn't leave myself enough room here. But if I go up 8 and left 7, yeah, something's not right.
Yeah, because you the x-intercept 0, 4.
It should be 4, 0.
Oh, 4, 0.
And I'm confused why we wouldn't, with negative 8/7 x plus 32/7, why wouldn't we start at the y-intercept, which is
You're
32/7?
supposed to go, you went down negative 3, negative 8. It's supposed to be up top on the other side.
You're right. Well, where's 32 over 7 on your y-axis?
Yeah, but can't we divide that and kind of get close?
Yeah, I don't want to be close. I want to be exact. So I graphed that point wrong is what I did. So I should have started at negative 3, positive 8. Right there, which is one of the points on the line.
And you have to pick negative, that would have to be the...
Well, I could have picked that one.
Okay.
Could pick either one. And then from there, I use my slope. I go down 8 over 7, which does put me at 4, 0. And there would be my line. And notice, again, I can draw my line. I can graph my line without having to deal with any fractions or any decimals. Always right on the corners, which is nice. All right, 2 more problems. And then, of course, you get some problems.
So would Math10 accept that answer or no?
I don't know. You'd have to read the directions. Sometimes my lab will accept this answer. Sometimes the directions will be very specific and say, find the equation of the line, write your answer in slope-intercept form. And if they said write it in slope-intercept form, what would you have to do? You'd have to give it that answer. So read the directions carefully. Alright, so I want the equation of the line. And I want it to go through a point. Somebody give me a point. 7, 2. Parallel to y equals 3/2 x minus 4. That's a fun one. Oh, good. How'd you find it fun? Do I know the slope?
3 over 2.
Oh, wait, yeah, you do.
I do.
It's -0, or, oh my god, 0, -1.
No, so I want slope. Slope is just a number. You're giving me a y-intercept, 0, -4.
Oh, okay.
I heard you say the slope is 3/2. Why do you say the slope is 3/2?
Parallel has the same thing.
What do you know about parallel lines?
Slopes.
They have exactly the same slope. What's the slope of the line I gave you? 3/2. It's in y equals mx plus b form, isn't it? So we know our slope is 3/2. Now we know the y-intercept of this line. The y-intercept of this line is 0, -4. But do we know the y-intercept of the line we want?
No.
No, because I didn't give you a 0 here, did I? I gave you a 7. That wasn't very nice. At this point, I need to make a decision. Do I want to use y equals mx plus b and deal with the fractions? Or do I want to use y minus y1 is m times x minus x1? The bottom one, okay. Some people like the bottom one. Some people always use the top one. There's nothing wrong with that. I just like to avoid the fractions when I can. I'm going to have y minus, what's my y1 number? 2 equals m 3/2 times x minus 7. And again, if you're taking a test for me, you can leave your answer just like that. I will not require you to do anything else with it.
If you ask us to graph that, would you want the other line up there as well?
Nope. If I asked you to graph it, I would just want you to graph that line. All right, last question. Through 7, 2, perpendicular to y equals 3/2 x minus 4.
Alright.
Alright.
Same thing, right?
Except,
Well, perpendicular with
-2/3.
right.
right, so the slope of this line that I gave you is,
-2/3.
well, the slope of this line is 3/2.
Yeah.
And how do you find the slope of the perpendicular line?
Flip it and change it.
You flip it and change the sign. So if I ask for perpendicular, you got to do two things with the slope. This slope is 3/2, so the slope we want is -2/3. You flip it upside down, and you change the sign. If this one had started off negative, our new one would have a slope that is positive.
Now, why would you do that?
That was something that we learned several sections ago about perpendicular lines.
Oh, that's right, you gotta do this.
You got to do the opposite reciprocal, it's called. Opposite means if this one's positive, that one's going to be negative. And reciprocal means flip it. If this one's 3/2, that one's 2/3. Other than that, it's the same answer. I would use y minus y1 is m times x minus x1. My answer would be y minus 2 is minus 2/3 times x minus 7. Questions?
No, you do that for just 1 second.
Yep. How many different ways are there for me to ask you to do the same thing?
Quite a few.
A lot. There's a lot of different information I can give you. What does it come down to no matter what information I give you? The right answer. All right, true. What's the most important thing you need to find? The slope is the most important thing to find. For every line, you always need to know the slope, no matter what. And then, hopefully, it's easy to find the intercept. If it's not easy to find the intercept, then I suggest using this equation. So my general rule of thumb is, if my slope is a fraction and I don't know the y-intercept, I tend to use this equation every time. If my slope is a nice number, not a fraction, then I'll go ahead and I'll use y equals mx plus b, because then it's pretty easy to plug the x and y in and find the b number. But when my slope is a fraction, I tend to want to not deal with the fractions. I use that.
So if the slope is a fraction, you can't find the y-intercept, you would use,
Well, I can find the y-intercept
if you don't have to.
if I don't have to. I can find it. It's just a matter of I'm going to have to multiply this fraction by a number, then I'm going to have to add the fraction to the other side. I want to avoid that work if I can.
So if the question says to simplify, you have to use mx plus b.
If the question says write the answer in slope-intercept form, then you can still use this equation, but then you just got to simplify it. You'd have to distribute the negative 2/3 through and then add the 2 over.
So basically, if the question doesn't require a y-intercept, then you can use that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.